Hello, this is Chris and welcome to another aviation video on Flight Sim. Today we're starting a new series, a full tutorial series. We're going to starting out in the Cessna 152 and we're going to teach you how to fly this aircraft all the way up to a multi-engine jet with air traffic control. So we're everything you need to know about flying a plane, we're going to cover in this series. I don't know how many episodes it's going to be, maybe about 15 episodes. We're going to do one a day, hopefully. And today we're starting out with the basics, the fundamentals of flight. So this is a completely full beginner tutorial. This is assuming you know nothing about flying. Absolutely nothing. Frames are not very smooth here, are they? This is assuming you know absolutely nothing. You've just picked up the simulator and you want to see what this is all about and how to get rolling. We have none of this outside gauges on, no helper stuff. We are just going to do this all on our own. And that's going to be the plan for this series. So today we're going to familiarize ourselves with the instruments and some of the fundamental forces at play with flight. And kind of just the basic physics of how flying works and stuff along those lines. So let's start with the main thing. What is this? This is our controls. This is known as the yoke. Pull backwards to go up. And as you can see, as we pull backwards, these are our elevators back here. That's how we move up. The air comes over the wings, they hit the elevators, and what happens to the air? The air gets deflected that way. You see? Hit, 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 hit. And that will push the tail down. That'll create a downward force on the tail, which will raise our nose, which is how we go up. And the same thing is true if we push the yoke forward, as you can see now. We push it forward, and the elevator is the elevator, and this is how we go down. So the air hits the elevator, pushes down, and the tail goes down, and then the nose goes down. This entire thing is called the horizontal stabilizer. It's in the back, and it stabilizes us horizontally, and the elevators are mounted on the back of it, as you can see. Now, how do we turn? So obviously you turn by moving the yoke to the left and to the right. Now, that moves these things right, left. These are called the aileron, which are on the wing. So now let's see. If you want to make a left turn, let's see how this works. So for moving to the left, what happens here? The air hits this wing, and as you can see, the aileron has moved down, so the air gets deflected downwards. And on this wing, the air gets deflected upwards. So if the air is getting deflected down that way, that is going to mean that this wing is getting forced upwards, just like how the elevator, that forces the tail down and the nose up. This going that way will push that wing down, and that will push that wing up, and that is how we'll make a right-hand turn, and the opposite is true for left. So, what about our rudder? Now, the rudder is the interesting one, because you'd think we have gone left, right, up, and down. What else can we do? So, let's see here. The rudders are down here, sorry. And they're pedals, so left and right, left, right. It's kind of like, yeah, it's just pedals, and that's the rudder. That's the big thing in the back here. The rudder controls the yaw. The yaw is the direction that the nose is facing, in simple terms. So if we move the rudder to the left, air is going to hit it, and it's going to go that way, which can turn the entire fuselage to the left. Now, the rudder has a lot of uses for, rudder. You use rudder input for crosswind landings and to maintain stabilized flight, but we will talk about that more later. The important ones for now are up, down, left, and right. Okay, and then we'll talk about that. Those are the most important forces, but we cannot forget about the rudder too. So let's, that's kind of the basic controls of the aircraft. Now we can actually look at what tells us what on this aircraft. This is a Cessna 152. This is a basic trainer aircraft, and we are going to be talking about what is going on this aircraft. So, what do all the buttons do? That's everyone's question. There aren't a lot of buttons on this aircraft, but there are some. But mainly, as we're looking at, this is called a six-pack. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are the 6 main instruments in the aircraft. So we'll move from left to right, left to right. So, we're starting here. This is the airspeed indicator. This just gives our airspeed in knots. Knots are equal, 1 knot is equal to 1.15 miles per hour. So that's a speed we use for aviation. The green band right here shows safe airspeed. So if we're below that, we're going too slow. If we're above that, we're going too fast. The yellow is caution. You can fly in the yellow as long as there's no turbulence. And the red is you don't pass that because then you could risk structural damage to the aircraft. And there's a maneuvering speed of 104. This is our attitude indicator. We don't have the battery turned on right now, so it's a little weird. If we go ahead and turn on the battery, it might take a second to figure itself out, but you can see everything comes to life. And ideally what this thing would do is it would center itself. I don't know if it's going to do that, but that's ideally what it might take a second because this thing is a vacuum pump. It's actually a pump that physically drives. We might need the engine on. So we'll turn the battery off now, and we'll worry about that later. But this is the attitude indicator. What the attitude indicator does is it shows us our attitude, basically. So this is level with the ground, and this is where we are. So what it says right now is we're in an up left turn, banking up and to the left. That's not true because we're on the ground sitting, obviously. But this thing just shows us there's 10 degrees, 20 degrees pitch up, 10 degrees, 20 degrees pitch down. It just shows us what our relative angle is. This is the least important instrument right now because we're going to be flying in visual flight rules VFR at the beginning, which means we're just going to be looking outside to see what angle we're at and what turn angle we're at. So, what's next? This is the altitude indicator. This shows us how high we are. So right now it's showing us at about 1,000 feet. So this is a small hand for 1,000, big hand for feet. So 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and this 100, 200. So we're at 1,000 and like 20 feet. And that's the airport elevation of this airport. It's 1,020 feet. This is above sea level. Above sea level, remember that. Now, let's look at this one. This is the turn coordinator. This one shows how coordinated we are. This shows us kind of what our bank angle is. If we move our plane, if we turn, the plane will actually move in the little thing. And that's a standard rate turn. That means it'll take us 2 minutes to go 180 degrees. That's used for some more complicated things that we'll talk about later on. Looks like there's a plane taking off over there. And this is the ball. This is to maintain a stabilized and coordinated flight. So there's a lot of turning tendencies out of this aircraft. The way the propeller spins and the way of a bunch of gyros and stuff means that the aircraft is going to want to turn left. It's going to want to bank to the left automatically. Without any input from the pilot, it's going to have a left turning tendency. So the way we counteract that is by using rudder. So you'll see with this ball, especially when we're taking off, it's going to drift to the right, which means we're going to have to give it right rudder on takeoff, step on that right pedal to keep the ball centered. If we're ball centered, that means we're in coordinated flight and the aircraft is flying straight. Next is the heading indicator. Heading in here just tells us which direction you're going. It's just like a compass, north, east, south, west, and they're 30 degrees, 60 degrees, 90 degrees. Pretty simple. Now, in real life, it actually precesses. The further north you are, this thing actually loses its accuracy over time. So we have a compass here. Like this is a literal magnetic compass and shows north. So what you have to do, I have the setting turned off, but you can turn it on in the simulator. But this thing is called precessing. So what you have to do every once in a while is see what the compass says, magnetic compass, and line up your heading indicator using this knob to your compass. This is just a clock. This is nothing to worry about. It's just a clock that just ticks along, and you can see how long we're going for. And yeah, that's just a clock. It's not always there. When we get into more complicated planes, this will look a little bit different. A lot of them will have screens, but for now we're just going to look at this just for training purposes. This is our vertical speed indicator. This shows us how fast we're going up. So this is 500 feet a minute, 1,000 feet a minute, 1,500 feet a minute, and 2,000 feet a minute. So that just shows us, and that's down, how quickly or slowly we are descending or ascending. These we will worry about later. This is for navigation and stuff. We'll worry about in another episode. Here's our fuel gauges. They don't work with the battery off and the engine off, but that just shows us how much fuel we have. Oil temperature and oil pressure, we only need that when we worry about the engine, but there's just some basic gauges. This is a parking brake or an emergency brake in your car. This is a primer. If you ever used a lot of equipment or machinery have primers in them, it just introduces a little bit of fuel into the engine before you start it up to help it start. We have a key to start the plane, so the key is off, and then we can turn it to the start position if you want to start the plane. Have a look at some of these lights down here. This is the light panel. So the dome light none of these are going to work because the battery's off, but the dome light is just a light in the cockpit. It's right there. And that it will just shine at night so we can see the pitot heat. This is not actually a light. This is the only one that isn't a light. And it warms up the pitot tube right here, because this is what gives us our airspeed and our altitude. Actually, I think it's just our airspeed. And it gives us a lot of information, and air comes in and it calculates airspeed from that. And the thing has a tendency to ice up and stuff, so if it's a cold day with clouds and moisture and stuff, you want to turn that on to keep it warm. Now the lights, the nav lights. We can turn on the battery just so we can have a look at what these lights are. So the nav light is used mainly at night, but you can use it in day. It is these two lights right here, green and red. And it just shows you what it's just for other pilots to see which way you're going. The left side is always red and the right side is always green. It's just so pilots can see where you're going at night. It's also sometimes people use it in the day as well. Strobe light. If you know what a strobe light is, this is a strobe light. It's flashing white lights, and it's just a strobe light. That's what a strobe light is, and it's used to indicate that you're moving and taking off and taxiing. It's on all the time during flight and during when the engine's on. The beacon light is also used to indicate that you're moving, and it is a red light on the top that flashes. It's also helpful to other pilots at night to see which direction you're going, and ground crew to see that you're about to start the engine. Next is a taxi light, and that's just a light for taxiing. You can see it's down at the bottom of the aircraft. That's just so you can see where you're going. It's especially useful at night. And then the last one is a landing light, and you turn that on when you're landing. It's just a brighter light setting for the taxi light. Other craft can have it mounted on the wings sometimes, but that's just what it is. It's just the light you use to turn on when you're taking off and landing, just so you can help illuminate the runway. Next here, this is the carb heat. This is just carburetor heat. Just it redirects air into the carburetor of your engine to keep it warm, just in case there's any kind of junk or whatever if the engine's too cool, the carburetor can have cool, you need to keep the carburetor warm basically, so you can turn that on if you want to. It's actually a complicated discussion within the general aviation community, but we can worry about that later. This is our throttle. It's a push throttle, so up to full, out to 0. This is a mixture. It just controls how much fuel is in the engine. So all that means that's max fuel getting pumped in, and that's less fuel. Controls the mixture, how much fuel. This is our flaps. So if we put the flaps to 10, you can see the flaps on the wing can lower. It can move them to 20 and to full. Now what these do is they help increase the surface area of the wing and increase drag, and they're used for landing and sometimes takeoff to help make sure you're at a nice slow speed to land at, and it also helps pitch the nose over so you can see the runway easier. We can go ahead and retract the flaps out. This is just air conditioning. This is an Adf radio. We use our radio panel, just tune frequencies in here. We're about that later. Here's a transponder. We can also worry about that later. This is our RPM limit, or reader. It's called tachometer. And it just shows us what our RPM is of the engine. This is just some more electrical information, and that is mainly what's on this aircraft. And there are some circuit breakers on the bottom. There's not that many, because there's not many systems on this aircraft. Two-seater airplane. Not a very complicated aircraft, this one. And this is just a radio that doesn't work. And this is our trim. As you can see, if I move the trim forward, you can see the trim tabs. You see how the elevator is kind of moved up a little bit? You see those tabs on the back? That just helps maintain a stabilized flight. So if we're cruising and the way we cruise is we have to have a little bit of back pressure, it's kind of hard to keep holding that back pressure in all the time, because it's tiring and it's kind of hard. So you can give it some trim, and then you can just kind of relax your yoke, and then the nose trim, since the elevator is kind of moved up prematurely, that it'll maintain level flight easier. And you can move that down if you want. You can move that down. Now you can see the trim tab is moved down. I think that's actually about it. Obviously these are the landing gear, the propeller. This is just a plane, and yeah, it's a plane. That's basically the basic systems of a base. This is pretty much the most basic aircraft out there, and that is an introduction to what flying basically is, the fundamentals. How does the basic six-pack, how does the basic physics of flying, and what are the controls? So that's going to be it for today. So thank you for watching. Next time, please rate or comment to this video. Once again, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. And bye.